The Saskatchewan legislature was completed in 1912. It took 4 years and $1.8 million, a big deal at the time. But the man who built the legislature wasn't here the day it officially opened. Premier Walter Scott was away, being treated for mental illness. Walter Scott was Saskatchewan's first premier, and one of its best. Under his leadership, the province grew and prospered. Not only did he build the legislature, he founded the University of Saskatchewan.
He was very optimistic, very confident that this was going to be the biggest and the best province in all of the Dominion of Canada.
Gordon Barnhart worked as the clerk of the Saskatchewan legislature for 20 years. His work there led to a fascination with Walter Scott. Scott was so popular he won 3 consecutive elections and served as premier for 11 years. But all along, he was hiding a secret.
He was manic depressive. He would have great periods of activity, particularly in the summertime. He would go to political rallies and meetings and write letters and upwards of 30 and 40 letters a day to people. And come November, he would go into a deep depression. I think we call it today seasonally affective disorder.
Walter Scott began missing entire legislative sessions. He would flee the province for 5 or 6 months every year to escape winter and seek treatment in the United States and Europe. He tried horseback riding, ocean voyages, almost anything to find a cure.
Scott spent a lot of time, and a lot of money, I might add, searching for the cure. He was desperate. He called his depression the black cloud over his shoulder, or pending doom, pending calamity. He would write about this to his friends. And come the end of summer, he dreaded the onslaught of another bout of depression.
Scott left behind dozens of personal letters in which he wrote frankly about his mental illness.
May 5th, 1913. I had a pretty bad time during a long course of months. From November 1911, during most of a year, I was suffering very decidedly from what's commonly called nervous prostration, exhaustion of nervous energy. I was depressed and under a sense of impending calamity all the time.
As his illness worsened, Scott began leaving Regina more and more often. In fact, during his 11 years as premier, he was in Saskatchewan for only half that time. The government was run by Deputy Premier James Calder and the rest of his cabinet. They covered up for Scott's illness. Most Saskatchewan people never had a clue. Finally, in 1916, it all fell apart. Scott lost it in the legislature. He began hurling insults at one of his political enemies, calling him a moral leper.
Some of the Liberals said, "You've gone too far." He crossed the line in terms of public debate.
Scott was forced to resign. His political career over, his depression would only worsen. Walter Scott gave Saskatchewan women the right to vote. He founded our provincial university and built this legislature. But the man who did so much for this province died alone and mostly forgotten in 1938 in an Ontario insane asylum. For the CBC NewsHour, I'm Bill Waiser in Regina.